Did we get our first Pro Tools GSL champion since 2017? What upset me in TSL 9? And can you be allergic to water? All of these questions will be answered in today's episode of StarCraft Today.
StarCraft Today.
Your favorite StarCraft news show. Last Friday was the finals of the GSL Season 2 2022, and with Hero vs Maru in the finals, people expected a lot of fireworks. And the first game indeed was an explosive one. Hell, it was so explosive that this is the game of the week. Hero started with a low ground gate while having a high ground pylon. Maru went for an SCV scout, but never got confirmation on the gate positioning. As a result, Maru underestimates the amount pressure Hero can put on and gets massively delayed on his natural command center, and on top of that loses a bunch of Marines to Adepts. This is important as Hero's follow-up consists of an Oracle and a Nexus being taken on, what? Maru's gold base? Without sufficient Marines present, the Oracle manages to get 8 kills on the first Oracle, but that is not where disaster ends, as a second Oracle shows up for a couple of extra kills. The Korean Terran decides that the only course of action is a 4-Rex SCV pool without a factory to his own gold base, which is occupied by Hero. Sadly for Maru, a couple of good force fields as well as the super battery allowed Hero to defend. At that point, all that Hero needs to do is build gate units and attack, and as it is Hero's specialty, that is exactly what he ends up doing, and he wins game number 1 with a well-prepared build order and picture-perfect execution. Game 2 features an unsuccessful mine drop, killing a mere 2 workers with neither of the mines surviving. Hero returns the favor with a storm drop, which mirrors the kill count of the mines, which was 2. Maru realizes that 2 defensive storms will be missing for the Pro Tools because of that failed storm drop and goes for an SCV pool. What follows is a fantastic fight out of Maru in which every normal Pro Tools player would have rolled over and died. Hero, however, is no ordinary Pro Tools player. He is a special one. And the special one uses his mind tricks to force Maru to fly his entire army into Stalkers and Archons that were trying to find the medevacts, and after a couple more back and forths between the armies, Hero manages to muster a force consisting of Immortal, Disruptor and Stalker, which Maru does not have an answer to. Despite Maru's best efforts, Hero also manages to take game number 2 on Curious Mind, the most Terran favorite map in the entire GSL map pool. Game 3 starts with a mine drop which kills 6 workers, 3 times as many workers as the previous game, and preserves both the mines in pristine state. This allows Maru to set up a powerful 3-1-1 timing with a Raven, a bunch of tanks, and a couple of mines. However, in this attack, Maru makes an uncharacteristic error as he decides to full-on engage into a shield battery overcharge, rather than letting it expire and then fight. The Terran loses a significant portion of his damage output, and despite his fantastic early game, will be forced back to his own side of the map. Both players macro up and Maru tries to go for another push with Ghost, but as he moves out, Zealots come out from every direction, in the main base, in the third and in the natural, and start taking out workers. Maru doesn't manage to kill Hero and loses a big portion of his eco at the same time, putting Hero in a good position for perhaps a mid-game win. And as Hero moves across the map to try and take that win, he takes the legit worst fight I've ever seen in professional StarCraft 2. Move commanding his Colossi through a choke, Blink Stalkers blinking into a planetary plus a Bioforce, and 5 Disruptor shots connecting with absolutely nothing. After this atrocious fight for Hero, Maru decides to counterattack and win the game. And unlike Hero in the last fight, Maru does control his units well and actually picks up his first win in the best of 7. Game 4 started with Hero putting on some Blink Stalker pressure, which lost him a bunch of Stalkers, but also netted him a couple of kills. Most notable out of these kills were 2 tanks. Maru believed that an SCV pool could finish the job here, but as the game was relatively even and Hero was all set up defensively, this attack completely fell flat and put Hero in a massive lead. Hero tries to end the game with his massive lead, but an upgradeless fight on the wrong side of the map, without reinforcements, usually doesn't end well. And that was the case here too. Luckily for Hero, he was so far ahead that it didn't even matter. He manages to stop Maru's counterattack, builds up for a bit and sends it again. This time, however, Maru just doesn't have the tools to defend and is forced to forfeit. Hero on match point in game 5 opens up with Blink and successfully defends the initial mine drop that Maru went for, killing both mines and the medevac while only losing a single probe. The game evolves into a rather stale macro game in which not much happens except some minor harassment and some posturing with the army on the map. This changes when Hero catches Maru slightly out of position, allowing him to move into Maru's natural and main base. At the same time, the Terran takes out one of Hero's bases, but as Hero has a gold going up simultaneously, he doesn't seem to mind at all. Hero attempts an attack at the fourth base while recalling his disruptors, but is forced to retreat, as Maru has plenty of bio to deal with the pure Stalker army that Hero now has. When the dust settles, Hero is up 20 supply, up a base and up an upgrade. With that lead, Hero continues to put on pressure on the side bases of Maru and slowly but surely picks the talented Terran player apart. Eventually, Maru's fierce defense can't hold any longer, and with a powerful Tempest Disruptor Stalker army and a couple of stray batteries, Hero takes game number 5 and wins the GSL final. Hero is the first Protoss player to win a regular GSL season since Season 1 in 2017 when Stats won. Big congrats to Hero for that, and I can't wait to see what he will bring in Season 3. Of course, we also had some Team Liquid Star League action, also known as the TSL. There were 24 matches that were played, and out of these matches, none really was an upset. Pretty much everything ended up in the result that I had expected beforehand, except perhaps the following two. The first one being Classic versus Bian. In that series, in Game 1, we saw Classic open up with an Oracle into Blink, managing to pick off a bunch of Marines and putting pressure on the depots on top of the ramp leading to the main base on Stargazers. The first real fight that happened after this also was kind of the game deciding fight, as Beyond got destroyed by a couple of disruptor shots, biting off more than he could chew there. Classic got himself into a good position and leveraged that position into an eventual win. In Game 2, Classic opened up with a proxy Stargate into a gateway pressure, which Beyond wasn't completely prepared for. As a result, the Terran takes big damage and despite holding on initially, is forced to tap out against the second wave. The second result that was somewhat surprising was Calazur versus Special. Out of the last 8 matches that they played, Calazur won 0. This time, however, the tables turned as Calazur got big damage off with a couple of Reapers and Hellions in game number 1 while taking no damage at home whatsoever. He held on to this lead for the entire game and managed to defend Special's follow-up 2.5 base all-in, allowing him to counterattack and win game number 1. Game 2 started off action-packed with a proxy 2-Rex Reaper out of Special. Calazur's defense, however, was brilliant and he managed to get himself into an even mid-game scenario, with Calazur playing Bio while Special opted for Mech. Sadly for Special, his mech setup wasn't solid enough and Calazur broke him rather easily, despite the even supply count. Calazur kept pressing on and took the win with a sustained bio push. Congratulations to Calazur and Classic for these minor upset. They'll be staying in the upper bracket, while Special and Beyond were forced down to the lower bracket. We'll see more of that TSL 9 action continuing on upcoming Friday. However, we also had 3 ESL Open Cups this week, and as always, starting in Korea on the Sunday. We saw an unleashed Beyond destroy Astrea in the finals with some beautiful multitasking and brilliant fights. A quick trio in favor of the Korean, who had the home advantage. Over in Europe, we saw Clem getting tested by Time, who was playing from China on the European server. The young Frenchie did end up victorious with a clutch Game 5 win after a big early game lead. Over in America, we saw Neep dominate on his home server, taking out MaxPax and Beyond to get to the finals. And in that finals, Neep faced Dark, and he showed the Korean Zerg how Protoss vs Zerg is really meant to be played. A convincing trio victory for Neep, as well as $200 and 10 EPT points. That brings us to this week's clip of the week, in which we see Ryung take a beautiful engagement against the Protoss.
They're going to be able to deal with that one, and now Liberator's sieging up, but the Stalker's already on position. Disruptor's zoning things out. 3 Liberators will fall, big Disruptor shots, but now here comes Ryung springing the trap. Surround coming in from every side. The Colossus are just all dead, including the one from the early game. Every little bit of something that Skillus has had, every hope, every dream on this side of the map, it's all going down. What an engage from the Master Tactician. He got everything.
He did get everything, and he needed to, because he was losing a lot at the start of the fight, but of course, it's a fragile army, right?
Beautiful surround, the way that Terran vs Protoss is supposed to be played, and sadly that already brings us to the end of this episode. But not before we answer the final question. Can you be allergic to water? And it may seem like a strange question, but the answer is yes. There is a very rare condition known as aquagenic urticaria, AU, where skin contact with water causes itchy, red hives or swelling. In severe cases, it can cause wheezing or shortness of breath. There's only about 50 cases reported in literature, and while aquagenic urticaria can happen in adults and children of any gender, it is more common in females during or after puberty. Reactions do not occur when drinking water because the water doesn't touch the skin, although some people may experience symptoms on the lips or inside the mouth. And with that, water. I will be ending today's episode of StarCraft Today. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you had a great time. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see all of you next time for a new video. Bye bye.